Okay, now, we have a few other speakers I have referenced. The first this afternoon is Deborah Lemon. We would like to welcome her to talk about her Navigate Your Way trust. Deborah Lemon shared with me in an earlier conversation that she is not a coder, but she is a data geek. And she loves to know how things go together and pull apart so that she can create more efficient ways to use time, money, and energy. Now, while doing just that for the District Health Board, she discovered a way to organize open data to make a real, tangible difference in people's lives, helping them while at the same time preserving their individual rights as well as their dignity, protecting privacy, but using and sharing data in a healthy way. Please welcome Deborah to the podium.
Kia ora, assalamu alaikum. I'm from Canterbury, and I'm very proud of the charity we've created called Navigate Your Way Trust. And I'll just try and do this clicker thing. So, thank you, Palace. And as Palace said, we're all about doing something with data for the greater good, being the conduit to advocate for people. And we're actually quite resource and services rich out there in most areas, but we actually just need people to know where that is. So to go back a little bit, this is the Integrated Health and Social Services. I used to work for Canterbury District Health Board for about 9 years. In my journey there, I was the pay person that came in that used to run the pays, used to do the taxes, broke the payroll system, put it back together. So whilst I wasn't a techie, I knew how to find someone to help me if I had an odd question like, can we do this? And I was very lucky that they had patience and they liked to do innovative things. I ended up working in a division called Design Lab, where we do mock-ups of hospitals. So basically, this was a place where disruption and was actually embraced, which was great. So along the way, I found after the earthquakes, we had lots of buildings with furniture and medical supplies, and I got a call one day and said, look, we've got some of your stuff here, come and get it. So I went to get it, and I'm like, there's a whole building full of stuff here, what's happening with it? And they said, it's coming down with the building. So I was like, public sector money, there's still value here, there's still value here. So I said, load up the truck, send it to the back of where I work, and I'll beg for forgiveness later. So that was the start of the journey of rehoming and clinical and medical supplies, and it still continues today. And we started this underground bartering with the police and with the prisons and with other sectors as well, and with the community sectors. So through that journey, I lived and breathed this model here, which was about people working in the communities, and the health sector wanted people to, they recognised that people recovered better in the community than they did in the hospital sector. So I'll refer back to that model later. So when I was rehoming some things, I thought, I've got more products than I can do things with, and I was trying to find directories of places that I could put these products, and I found so many directories. There was directories for the sake of directories. There was directories for so many things that I didn't even know where to start. But then I found that a lot of the people didn't actually know about each other's directories within the same organisation, which was quite common in public sector, not so common in NGOs, but NGOs had such a wealth of knowledge that just wasn't being tapped into, and all we needed to do is actually did a wee bit of market research before we actually created a directory. So through doing that, we still found that people were still killing trees because we still need a hard version. I like hard versions, sorry guys, I'm still like to touch and feel. I know we've got these e-books and things, but I still love the idea of a book. What we found is a lot of the directories focused on Pacific areas, and I was lucky enough, I went to the ladies and there was a poster there because I was starting to do my own directory, and here was a sign. It was a poster for Cinch, and I was like, wow, it's the directory I've been looking for. And it was, Cinch was a directory that was developed by the libraries, and the libraries are owned by the council, who do their own directory, which is quite separate, and never the twain shall talk. But I found this one-man band, and because firstly I rang up and said, who's the stakeholder of this? And then I found that it was just some guy in a backroom office that did it. And he was amazing. So we talked and we got to know things, and then he said about Family Services Directory, and he said he thought that MSD was modelling something similar to what he was doing. And then I needed to find out all the different directories around, because the amount of volunteers and the people required to maintain this was just horrendous. So you have to bear with me putting my glasses on and off. I haven't quite used to, yeah. So while I was at Design Lab, where we did the mock-ups of the hospital, which was CDHB, I came across lots of people from Assurity in Wellington. I came across people who worked in Service Innovation Lab. Even though I was an operational PA, it didn't stop me. I didn't have borders around me. I probably should have had at times, but I didn't. At times I'd jump on a plane and just go and meet people. Met Pia Andrews, who's now in Australia. Yeah. Canada now, is it? Oh, yeah. You need to watch her. Yeah. I'm just very privileged to have met her, so it's great. So I started going to a few techie things, and even though I wasn't a techie, I thought they needed to know me and I needed to know them. I met a group of people called, from Media Suite, called George Wills. I thought he was someone else, but he wasn't. It just happened to look like the same guy, and ended up, he said he'd help me, so I was like, great. And this is the team that helped me on my journey and still continue to help me. And God bless, they're just amazing. They believe in me, they continue to believe in me, even though at times I wonder, what am I doing? So I said to George, I said, look, you know, it came from a place I had all these resources, and when I found and I talked to people, they didn't know about each other, and then there was so much information, it was labour intensive, there was lots of volunteers doing the same thing. It was just crazy. There was multiple sets. You know, you had in the Family Services Directory, which I found, even though it said MSD, it then belonged to Arana Tamariki, and then it belonged somewhere else, and I was like, but I still managed to find the person that owned it, so that was great. And but what I found is there wasn't a lot of collaboration between parties, and that was really quite frustrating, because this was valuable data that could potentially make the difference to people's lives. And what I found is Family Services, it's driven around mainly people they fund or have a specific criteria. So with George and his team, we created this journey mapping, because I was very much about the front line and understanding how things fitted in from the front line backwards. So from mapping up this, we were able to find out how we wanted the directory to work in terms of what directory we chose. We chose the Family Services Directory. We decided we'd pull it down every 2 weeks from a technical point of view. Further technical spiel around that, you'd need to talk to George. I just ask them what to do and they do it. But basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a directory that was easier to find things that met my need. I didn't want sad situations where we were re-traumatising people. We were re-marginalising them again because things weren't accessible. So I found that the journey mapping and data was really critical, because along the way we found that ID was a big problem, and then we found that if we could encourage people to use Realme, then if they lost their ID, at least they had some sort of form that we could hook them back in quickly. You need ID to get a benefit, and the story goes on. We also found data around Smart Start services, which I was at the Conception and Service Innovation Lab. Wasn't anything to do with it, but I really appreciated it, what it could do, and have used it and continue to use it. I've even promoted it to baby shops and said, you want to add value? You tell your customers about this. So there's other ways you can promote things. The other thing is we've used is, there was the charities register, and I said, George, there's so much out there, people just don't know where to get it. They don't know that along the way there's different types of housing, but we also needed to understand, was there a house that could fit everyone's need? And sometimes the answer wasn't always good, and sometimes we found that people were spending money unnecessary or going through extra hoops to get things when they didn't need to. And Smart Start's a good example of taking those hoops away. When recently I helped some people get some IRD tax numbers, it took us for a family of 4, 56 pieces of papers to get that across the line. So there was lots of data sets that we found could help that people weren't aware of, and it was by because I come from a Maori background, 5th generational, and not a lot of people realise that if you know the iwi and if you know the hapu, there's actually a lot of resources that people can tap into as whānau, in terms of schooling, in terms of medical help, health, kamatuas. So the data that we're not actually getting in the police and the health and the prisons, we're missing out on so much resources that can actually help each other to make some change and help people live in a better and rich life. So we had to call it something. I wanted to call it papatohu. I was told it wasn't white collar enough. One part of me wanted to be naughty and just keep it, but I kind of got it. Unfortunately, sometimes the world wasn't ready for me. So we ended up creating a name called Navigate Your Way. And another reason for creating Navigate Your Way is that I found that sometimes there was, as Carlos highlighted earlier, about sometimes hidden data ruins trust, and sometimes invalid data can hurt communities. So it's really important about the integrity and about being transparent. And sometimes we think we're being good by being so overly sensitive about the data, but that's actually counterproductive. So we created this Navigate Your Way. George had some beautiful lady called Sarah who was able to do my drawings, and she created this website that was in its infancy, because what I wanted to do was I wanted to find something that was already out there. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I never wanted to be the CEO. I never wanted to be the head of things. I just wanted to do change. And I came from a background of supply chain, very aware of Kansan, continuous improvement, could apply it to the human model, the circular economy, reusing things, very big on that. So we had, when I was at the hospital, we had a laundry division. That laundry, that's excess, and all the clothes that you leave behind in your hotels now goes to the prison systems. and they share it right throughout the South Island. And recently I needed some sensory blankets for children, so that now comes back again. So what we did is, with the open data though, we still found there was a lot of things that needed, the main thing is we wanted data to help people be stewards of their own destiny, and we wanted to educate people so that they could be more independent and not actually need to look at different websites to find the help. So we started to look at the housing. We looked at what was available. We went through the options of emergency to transitional to more, this is more around the lower socio-economic end. And we found what New Zealand's always known, that there isn't enough housing. And there's not enough good housing. So whilst we have emergency housing, it's only as good as that you work if you find your situation Monday to Friday. If it's out of hours or on the weekend, then you can be kind of lost because there's not many places that you can get help. So it was really important that part of this journey that we broke filters down and created filters around what type of housing would people need. Fast forward to using 3 different types of directories, which was all about the same place. It was a women's refuge. What we found is that we were basically devaluing our men, our young boys. If you were 13 and your mum needed to go to a women's refuge, you couldn't go with your 13-year-old boy. They only accept boys under 12. So what we wanted to do is try not to point them in the direction of a place that would encourage split families. But what we found also in these 3 directories, and one of the directories is by the council, one of the directories is by Cinch, who's owned by the council, and the other one is by Family Services Directory, is they didn't talk about criteria and eligibility. They didn't talk about if you go there and you have a boy that's 13, that I'm sorry, we can't help you. So I actually rang up and thought, can I just check this out? And they said, oh, no, that's right, you have to split the family. And I said, well, we don't want to split the family. So, yeah, there was quite a few things along the way. I have to hurry up because I can tell you stories for Africa. We had case managers from prison that wanted to know where they could put prisoners. We used our data sets to match places that would accept people with electronic monitoring. We found places that would help, people that had dogs. City Mission now have kennels in place so that can give respite care. And then we also had, it's quite interesting, sometimes we think we need to be fancy. Housing First was developed out of, there was a Kamātua lady, Wafaya, who had an exercise book. All I did was put all of her data into an Excel spreadsheet, and then it became Housing First. So it doesn't have to be fancy. Smart Start, my favourite. I would like Smart Start to be the same initiative for migrants. Imagine if migrants moving into New Zealand had a Smart Start version of a journey where we took you through a bank account, where we took you through an IID number, health system, etc. We've been working in the community of the Kai version, finding out who does food rescue, community gardens, foraging, food banks, community, then just raising it to the surface so we're not getting duplications. And this has been quite helpful. My only sadness is that we're going to provide food in school, which is great, but have they checked what is out there currently at the moment? I really wanted to touch on this. I'm just going to pass forward because of timing. Is Privacy Act. This is really critical. It's the most misunderstood act we have. I've seen the sadness that it's created. I've been involved with the Muslim communities for the last year, and the sharing of data has been barriers to recovery, and it's very sad because people don't realise that the Privacy Act was put there to actually control the flow of data, not stop it. And unfortunately, and one particular lady, because of how we handled things, her husband died 6 hours later and she wasn't able to see him. And that was because of the delay in data. Thank you.